Hashtag act like you love me, please, a story of unexpected love. Before I share this incredible story that will change how you see strangers forever, I need you to do something. If you believe in love, fate, and second chances, hit that like button right now. And if you want more stories that touch your soul, subscribe and ring that notification bell. Trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand why I asked. Now, let me take you to a moment that changed two broken lives forever, ****. The autumn wind carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant rain as Marcus Thompson sat on the worn wooden bench in Riverside Park, watching his 5-year-old daughter Lily chase pigeons across the faded grass. His coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but he couldn't bring himself to care. It had been 3 years since his wife Sarah passed away from cancer, 3 years of learning how to braid hair, pack lunches, and answer impossible questions about why mommy wasn't coming home. 3 years of pretending he had it all together when most nights he cried himself to sleep after Lily's bedroom light went out. Marcus was 34 years old, but he felt ancient. His once bright eyes had dulled to a tired gray, and the laugh lines around his mouth had been replaced by the permanent furrow of worry between his brows. He worked as an accountant from home, a blessing that allowed him to be present for his daughter but a curse that kept him isolated from the world of adults. His mother kept telling him he needed to get out more, to meet people, to live again. But how could he live when half of his heart was buried in Greenwood Cemetery? Lily squealed with delight as a particularly bold pigeon refused to fly away, instead hopping closer to inspect her tiny sneakers. Her laughter was the only music Marcus needed, the only reason he got out of bed each morning. She had her mother's auburn hair and her father's stubborn chin, and every day she looked more like Sarah. It was both a comfort and a knife to the heart. The park was quiet this Tuesday afternoon, mostly empty except for a few joggers and an elderly couple feeding ducks by the pond. Marcus liked it this way. Weekends were chaos, filled with happy families and couples holding hands, reminders of everything he had lost. But weekday afternoons belonged to the lonely, the lost, the people who didn't quite fit into the normal rhythm of life. He was about to call Lily over for a snack when he noticed her, a woman walking quickly toward his bench. She was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and eyes that darted nervously around the park. She was beautiful in an unconventional way, the kind of beauty that came from character rather than symmetry. But what struck Marcus most was the fear in her expression, the barely contained panic that made her movements sharp and desperate. Before he could process what was happening, the woman sat down beside him on the bench, so close that their shoulders almost touched. Her perfume was subtle, something floral and warm, and her breathing was rapid and shallow. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Act like you love me. Just for a few minutes. Please." Marcus's first instinct was to recoil, to stand up and walk away from this clearly unstable stranger. He had a daughter to protect, a quiet life to maintain. He didn't need complications or drama or whatever this woman was bringing into his carefully constructed world. His mouth opened to refuse, to make some excuse, to extract himself from this bizarre situation. But then he looked into her eyes. They were brown, deep and warm like aged whiskey, and they were filled with a terror that Marcus recognized. It was the same terror he had seen in Sarah's eyes during those final weeks, the fear of someone who knew that danger was close and escape was uncertain. It was the look of a person who had run out of options and was placing their last hope in the hands of a stranger. "There's a man," she continued, her voice barely audible. "Blue jacket. He's been following me for 3 blocks. I don't know what to do. I just need him to think I'm not alone. Please. I have a daughter at home. I can't let anything happen to me. She needs me." The mention of a daughter changed everything. Marcus didn't look around for the man in the blue jacket. Instead, he did something that surprised even himself. He reached over and took the woman's hand in his, intertwining their fingers as naturally as if they had done this 1,000 times before. Her hand was cold and shaking, but it fit perfectly in his palm. How long have we been married? He asked softly, leaning in close as if sharing a secret. The woman's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. 7 years, she answered, playing along. We met at a bookstore. That's right, Marcus said, his voice warm. You were reading that terrible romance novel, and I told you the ending was disappointing. Despite her fear, a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. It wasn't terrible. It was a classic. Daddy. Lily came running over, her pigeon friends forgotten. She stopped short when she saw the stranger sitting next to her father, holding his hand. Her little brow furrowed in confusion. Marcus's heart clenched. He hadn't thought about how to explain this to his daughter. But before he could speak, the woman leaned forward with a gentle smile. Hi, sweetheart. I'm Elena. I'm a friend of your daddy's. We were just talking about you. He says you're the best pigeon chaser in the whole city. Lily's suspicion melted into pride. I almost caught one today. It was gray and fat and it didn't even fly away when I got close. That's amazing, Elena said, and the warmth in her voice was genuine. Maybe next time you can introduce me to your pigeon friends? Marcus watched the exchange with a strange feeling blooming in his chest. He had become so isolated that he had forgotten what it felt like to have adult conversation, to share a moment with someone who understood the unspoken language of parenthood. Elena was clearly terrified, but she still took the time to connect with his daughter, to make Lily feel special and seen. From the corner of his eye, Marcus caught movement. A man in a blue jacket had appeared at the edge of the park, standing near the entrance with his hands in his pockets. He was watching them, his gaze fixed and unwavering. Even from this distance, Marcus could feel the malevolence radiating from him like heat from a fire. He's here, Elena whispered, her hand tightening around his. Marcus made a decision. He stood up from the bench, pulling Elena gently to her feet. Come on, sweetheart, he said to Lily. Let's go get ice cream. All of us. Mommy's friend is joining us today. He regretted the word as soon as it left his mouth. Mommy. He hadn't called anyone that in 3 years. But Lily didn't seem to notice the slip, too excited by the prospect of ice cream to question the unusual situation. They walked together across the park, Marcus keeping his body between Elena and the man in the blue jacket. Lily skipped ahead, singing a nonsensical song about pigeons and ice cream, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. Elena stayed close to Marcus, her arm now linked through his, playing the part of a loving wife with a desperation that broke his heart. The ice cream shop was 2 blocks away, a small family-owned place that Lily loved because they had sprinkles in every color of the rainbow. Marcus held the door open for Elena and Lily, then glanced back at the street. The man in the blue jacket was gone. I think we lost him, Marcus said quietly as they settled into a booth. Elena's whole body sagged with relief. For the first time since she had sat down on that bench, she looked like she might cry. Thank you, she breathed. You have no idea what you just did for me. Who was he? Marcus asked while Lily studied the menu with intense concentration. Elena's expression darkened. My ex-husband. We divorced 2 years ago after I found out he was hurting our daughter. He went to prison, but he got out last month. He's not supposed to be anywhere near us, but the restraining order is just a piece of paper. He's been following me for weeks. I've gone to the police, but they say they can't do anything until he actually does something. Her voice cracked. I'm so scared. Not for myself. For my daughter. She's 4 years old and she still has nightmares about him. Marcus felt a wave of anger wash over him, fierce and protective. He had never met this man, but he already hated him with an intensity that surprised him. How could anyone hurt a child? How could any father betray the sacred trust of parenthood? What's your daughter's name? He asked. Sophie. Elena pulled out her phone and showed him a picture. A little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile beamed at the camera. She was holding a stuffed elephant and wearing a princess tiara. "She's my whole world." "She's beautiful," Marcus said, and he meant it. Lily looked up from her menu. "I want rainbow sprinkles. And chocolate sauce. And whipped cream. And a cherry on top." "That's a lot of toppings," Marcus laughed, grateful for the interruption from the heavy conversation. "It's a special occasion," Lily said matter-of-factly. "We have a new friend." Elena met Marcus's eyes across the table, and something passed between them. It was understanding, recognition, the acknowledgement that they were both navigating the impossible waters of single parenthood. They were both drowning in their own ways, and somehow, in this random moment in a park, they had reached out and grabbed each other's hands. They stayed at the ice cream shop for an hour, talking and laughing while the children made a magnificent mess with their sundaes. Marcus learned that Elena was a nurse at the children's hospital, that she had moved to this neighborhood 6 months ago to escape her ex-husband's reach, and that she spent her free time reading those terrible romance novels that Marcus had teased her about. Elena learned that Marcus was an accountant who had never recovered from losing his wife, that he made pancakes every Saturday morning because it was the only thing he could cook, and that he secretly cried during animated movies when the sad parts came on. By the time the ice cream was gone and the paper napkins were shredded beyond recognition, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Can I give you my number?" he asked as they walked outside. "In case he comes back. In case you need help." Elena hesitated. Marcus could see the war playing out on her face, the desire for connection battling against the fear of vulnerability. She had been hurt so badly that trusting anyone felt like stepping into traffic. "I'm not asking for anything," Marcus added quickly. "I just want you to know that you're not alone. No one should have to face what you're facing by themselves." Elena reached into her purse and pulled out a pen. She took his hand and wrote her number on his palm, her handwriting small and neat. "Thank you, Marcus. For everything. You didn't have to help me. Most people would have walked away." "I almost did," he admitted. "But then you mentioned your daughter. And I thought about what I would want someone to do if Lily was in danger and I couldn't protect her. I would want someone to step up. So that's what I did." They parted ways on the street corner, Elena walking toward the bus stop and Marcus heading home with Lily on his shoulders. But something had shifted in the universe. Some invisible thread had been spun between two lonely souls, and nothing would ever be quite the same. Marcus called Elena 2 days later, telling himself it was just to check on her. She sounded surprised but pleased to hear from him. The man in the blue jacket hadn't appeared again, but she was still looking over her shoulder everywhere she went. They talked for an hour, long after the original purpose of the call had been addressed. They talked about their children, their fears, their dreams, the mundane details of daily life that somehow felt fascinating when shared with another person. A week later, they arranged a playdate for Lily and Sophie. The girls met at the park, the same bench where their parents had first crossed paths, and within minutes they were inseparable. Sophie was shy and quiet, still bearing the invisible scars of her early childhood trauma, but Lily's exuberant energy drew her out of her shell. They played together for hours while Marcus and Elena sat on the bench, their shoulders almost touching, watching their daughters become friends. "This is nice," Elena said softly. "I forgot what nice felt like." Marcus understood exactly what she meant. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of growing closer while respecting boundaries. Marcus and Elena saw each other 2 or 3 times a week, always with the children present, always in public places. They didn't call it dating. They didn't call it anything at all. They were just 2 broken people helping each other pick up the pieces. But Marcus couldn't deny the feelings that were growing in his heart. Every time he saw Elena, his pulse quickened. Every time she laughed at one of his terrible jokes, he felt like the sun had come out after a long rain. He hadn't felt this way since Sarah, and the guilt was almost overwhelming. How could he fall in love again when his wife's memory still lived in every corner of his home? One night, after the girls had fallen asleep during a movie night at Marcus's apartment, Elena found him crying in the kitchen. He had been looking at an old photo of Sarah, one where she was holding newborn Lily in the hospital, her face radiant with joy despite her exhaustion. "Tell me about her," Elena said, sitting down beside him. And Marcus did. He told her everything about Sarah, the beautiful and the painful, the laughter and the tears. He told her about how they met in college, how she had rejected him 3 times before finally agreeing to a date, how she had cried when he proposed because she was so happy. He told her about the diagnosis, the treatment, the hope and the despair and the final goodbye. He told her things he had never told anyone, things he had been carrying alone for 3 years. Elena listened without interrupting, without judging, without trying to fix anything. She just listened, and that was exactly what Marcus needed. "She sounds amazing," Elena said when he finally fell silent. She was. Marcus wiped his eyes. "And I feel guilty for even thinking about being with someone else. Like I'm betraying her memory. Like I'm not allowed to be happy again." Elena reached over and took his hand, the same way he had taken hers in the park. "Do you think Sarah would want you to be lonely forever?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He knew the answer. Sarah had made him promise, in those final days, that he would live fully and love completely and not let grief become his permanent home. She had looked him in the eyes and said, "Find someone who makes you laugh. Someone who loves Lily. Someone who reminds you that life is still worth living." "No," he admitted. "She would want me to be happy." "Then maybe it's time to let yourself be happy," Elena said. "I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting anything. But I want you to know that I care about you, Marcus. Not because you saved me in the park that day, but because of who you are. You're kind and patient and funny and you love your daughter with everything you have. Those are rare qualities. And I would be honored to be part of your life, in whatever way feels right." Marcus looked at her, this woman who had stumbled into his world with a desperate plea and somehow become the center of it. He thought about all the reasons why this was a bad idea, all the complications and risks and potential heartbreaks. And then he stopped thinking altogether. He leaned forward and kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. It was their first kiss, and it tasted like ice cream and tears and the beginning of something new. The months that followed were not easy. Building a blended family never is. Lily and Sophie had to learn how to share their parents, how to navigate the complex dynamics of having a sibling who wasn't quite a sibling. Marcus and Elena had to figure out how to merge 2 households, 2 sets of traditions, 2 different approaches to parenting. And then there was Elena's ex-husband, Daniel. He reappeared on a cold November morning, standing across the street from Elena's apartment building when she was walking Sophie to school. Elena saw him and froze, her hand gripping Sophie's so tightly that the little girl whimpered. Sophie hadn't seen her father in over 2 years, but she recognized him immediately. The color drained from her face, and she started to cry. Elena called Marcus, her voice shaking so badly that he could barely understand her. He was at her apartment in 15 minutes, and he found them huddled in the bathroom, Sophie sobbing uncontrollably while Elena tried to stay calm for her daughter's sake. "We need to call the police," Marcus said. "They won't do anything. They never do anything. Then we'll make them do something." Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed 911. He reported the restraining order violation, demanding to know why a convicted child abuser was being allowed to terrorize his victims. The operator was sympathetic but non-committal. An officer would be dispatched. They should stay inside. These things take time. Marcus was not a violent man. He had never been in a fight in his life. But as he watched Sophie cry and Elena tremble, something ancient and protective stirred in his chest. He would not let this monster destroy the family they were building. For the next 3 weeks, Marcus became Elena's shadow. He walked Sophie to school every morning and picked her up every afternoon. He installed security cameras around Elena's apartment. He hired a lawyer to push for a more aggressive prosecution of the restraining order violation. He did everything in his power to create a wall of safety around the people he loved. Daniel was eventually arrested after he was caught on camera trying to break into Elena's building. The violation of probation, combined with the original conviction, meant he was going back to prison for a much longer sentence. The trial was brutal, requiring Elena and Sophie to testify about the abuse they had suffered, but Marcus was there for every moment. He held Elena's hand in the courtroom. He stayed up with Sophie when she had nightmares. He was the rock they both needed. When the guilty verdict was announced, Elena collapsed into Marcus's arms and sobbed with relief. It was over. They were safe. They could finally start living without fear. 1 year to the day after that first meeting in the park, Marcus took Elena back to the same bench. The autumn leaves were falling again, painting the grass in shades of gold and red. Lily and Sophie were chasing pigeons together, their laughter echoing across the quiet park. "Do you remember what you said to me that day?" Marcus asked, reaching into his pocket. Elena smiled, her eyes glistening with the memory. "Act like you love me. Please." "I've been thinking about that a lot lately," Marcus said, pulling out a small velvet box. "And I realized something. I don't want to act anymore. I want to love you for real. For the rest of our lives." He opened the box to reveal a simple diamond ring, modest but beautiful. Elena's hand flew to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know we've only been together for a year," Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I know we both have baga.